All right, so let me start a new Python replit. I'm so grateful for this online software called Replit because it makes it so much easier to work with different languages and all in the browser. All right, so let me just look back at the question. All right. Let's get this code typed up. All right, so we're going to be, so this is the count down function from the textbook. Let me see if my font size, I think I made it bigger before, but let me just check and make sure that, oh yeah, I have it on huge size. All right, let me just kind of move this over because I don't think we need to see that. All right, okay, so I put my comment in, tell us what we're doing. Let me type up the function now. All right, so we have def count down. It's gonna take an integer n, oh, this should be colon. And it's if n is less than or equal to 0, then it's gonna print, not the right brackets, it's gonna print blast off with an exclamation. Let's just check again. Okay. And all right, so we have that there. It's 1 second there. Okay, so all right, after blast off, we have else. Else colon print the number, and then we're gonna call the function countdown inside countdown. It's gonna be countdown n minus 1. I think that's the end of the function. All right, so just do another check. Can everybody still see my screen and can you hear me?
Yes, for both.
Okay. So we're going to actually test out, before we do our version of the work through the version of the function ourselves. Let's see if we can understand what this one does here. So I'm not sure if anybody tested it out already, but let's go ahead and call the function with a value. So let me try 5. Okay, and let me run this. It says count. Oh, I said counter, not countdown. My bad. Did not spell the name properly. And let's run this again. Oh, hi, Caroline. I was looking for you earlier. Were you able to join us from the start? I do hope so. All right, so as we can see here, so let's go through the program. So it passes on line 3, it passes 5 to line 4. Is 5 less than or equal to 0? That is true. No, it's not true, sorry. It's not less than 0. It's actually greater than 0. So it's not true. So it's going to go to the else. It's going to print 5. Then it's going to subtract 1 from 5. And it's going to call itself again, okay? and that means it's now going to be 4, and then it's going to print 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off. Okay. All right. So does the way how the function work make sense to everybody? Is that clear for the most part? Solomon, Skipper, Emmanuel, Jonathan. So this countdown function, is it pretty much straightforward? You getting the idea? I wonder if they can hear me.
I can hear you. So I'm trying to see if I can get it. Like we have n countdown n minus 1. So I'm trying to locate where we have the 1 that came in there to like the minus, where we have the n minus 1.
Yeah. So the n,
apart from that, we
yeah.
have countdown 5. Does it mean we can put in any number there? Like, can I say like countdown 6, countdown 3?
Yes. But remember, it is a function, so you created the function so you can pass various variables to them as long as it is the correct type. So we can pass numbers. We couldn't pass a word or a string, but we could use like 7. So if I use 7 and run it, it's going to count down from 7. Let's see what it does there.
Yeah,
so it keeps subtracting from the value each. This is no muy bien, not at all. All right. Okay, I think it's back on the screen now.
And my screen is stuck on the Google Docs.
Oh, let me check and see if you can see over on Google Meet. 1 second. I probably have to start sharing again. Stop presenting and then start sharing again for you. All right, you should be able to see it now, I think.
Yes, now I can see. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so the countdown will work with number 7 now. We could even do it from 10. So let me go ahead and put 10 in. And it should work. All right, so see it counts down from 10. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Yes, I can. Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right, so it's going to be reducing the number by 1 each time the condition checks to be greater than 0 or equal to 0. It will only stop once the number gets to negative. So this is one that's counting down. All right, so let's go over to the question. And it's 1 second. Let me just get the question up. It says, write a new recursive function that counts up, that expects a negative number and counts up from that number. Output from running the function should look something like this. Count up, given -3 as an argument, should say -2, -1, then blast off. So it will be going from negative up until 0. Okay. So in terms of what the question wants us to do we understand that? Even if you don't understand the Python version of it, do you understand what they want the question to do, everybody?
Yes, it wants it to do the opposite, right? To count up instead of count.
To do the opposite. Okay, great. So let's go to our code screen. Now, because of how this solution is done, pretty much everybody's code is going to look similar. So for this example, it's technically not going to be plagiarism because the way the solution works, you're pretty much going to have the same kind of code. But at the same time, I want everybody to try to understand how this function works, because if you get a recursive function on the exam, you want to understand how that works. And certainly you want to understand how a recursive function works if you're using Python out there in your career, in the field, in the workplace, okay? So I'm just mentioning that because when I go through this example here, it's pretty much the same thing that you're going to have as your answer. There's not really much other way around it, really. So your instructor won't charge you for plagiarism, but you need to make sure that you understand the way that the code works, because they told us the name of the function. We have to call it count up. We have to use the word blast off. We can use different variables to test the different values to test our function, okay, to make sure that it works, of course, and use that as output. So when you put in a number, at least try to be creative in that area. But for the most part, you're gonna have people's code looking the same. All right, I've talked enough about that. Let's go to the code. Just wanted to be clear that people don't have to stress themselves out to have this totally weird looking function that's totally different. All right, so let's go to define count up. All right, so Renata said that it's basically going to be doing the opposite. Oh, I keep typing countdown. So used to countdown. So count up. It's still going to take a value. Remember, an integer is a negative or positive whole number, so it's still going to be an integer number variable. Now here is where we need to figure out now what kind of logic our program should test. Okay, everybody? If we're doing a count up, then the condition must be different from the countdown. For counting down, we just wanted to make sure that we have not gotten to a number that is less than 0, because we're starting with a positive number like 10, 5, any number that's greater than 0. For the count up, they want us to count from a negative number that goes up towards 0, which is technically considered positive. So if the condition is the opposite, it needs to be the reverse of being less than 0. Hope I'm making sense so far. So we would need to say, we need to check if n is greater than 0, because once greater than or equal to 0, because once n becomes equal to 0, we need to blast off because we're going from the negative to the positive or the opposite direction. Okay, so notice here on line 4, we were checking to see if n was less than or equal to 0. Now we're checking to see if n is greater than or equal to 0, because once it hits 0, coming from the negative, coming all the way down from the negative, once it hits 0, then we have gone up to the point that we need to stop and then print blast off. Oh, sorry, I made a line break there. Let me go back on here. So if
I tried to do that, but my thing went crazy.
Maybe you can show a lot of numbers. Right, maybe you can show me. Maybe it printed a lot of numbers.
Yeah, a lot of negative numbers.
Okay, so Renata is saying it printed a lot of negative numbers for her. Okay, so far we know that we're on the right track so far by doing this, right? Because we know that we only print blast off when it becomes equal to 0, right? And we need an exclamation mark in the text there. Okay, and we know we're going to need an else because we have to keep making it larger and larger or count up. So the tricky part is now, what do we do after the else here? Well, it's actually, it turns out it's not so tricky because we need to keep printing the numbers as the example shows us. So let's go back to the question. Remember the question gave us an example that if we put in -3 to count up, it's going to say 2, -2, -1, and blast off. So we need to have something printed. So it's not too much of a guesswork when you think about it, because we have the example of the first function to follow. So we'd need to print what n actually is, because we need a way for it to be counting on the screen, right? So that one pretty much makes sense. Then what do we do here? Well, if we're not counting down and we're counting up, would we do subtraction? What would we do when we call the count up function? Would we do subtraction, or what math operator would we do? Can anybody tell me?
I think if we're counting up, I think we should be doing the addition
right. So we'd be doing addition, okay? Because we want to make the number larger. And how that works is that let me just put a note here. in the example that they gave us in the question, if you have -3 and you add +1 to it, it then becomes -2. So you see it's starting to count up. So that's why it has to be a plus, okay? If we had it at -2 and then we added 1, then that becomes -1, you see? Sorry, and it becomes one step closer to 0. So that's why we have to be adding if we want to count up, okay? All right, so having explained that, I think we have closed off our functioning, all right? So now the moment of truth, let us test it with a number. Let's see if we test it with the -3 from the book, from the questioning your people, and let's see if it does the same thing. Oh boy, I'm so nervous. Let's see if it works. Hey, it counted down. Awesome. Okay. Yeah, so now it's counting up. So that's it. That's actually how it is. Okay, but I don't think that's all that we have to do though. Okay, that's just one part of the problem solved. Let's see here where the rest of it goes. So we're now at this section here. Okay, where it says write a Python program that gets a number using keyboard input. Remember to use input for Python 3 or input for, nobody's using Python 2. That's very old. We're all using Python 3. All right, so here's now where we have to use a conditional to help to make our program a much bigger and more professional looking program. So we had the hard work done, I think, really, where the functions created. Now we just need to do it in a way that we choose whether we're going to count up or count down. So that's definitely going to be a conditional that we have to create. If something is negative, we do this. If something is positive, we do that. So the question is, how do we know when a number is positive? A positive number means that it's what? It's like 0 or 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 or 15, right? A negative number is like -1, -5, -6, okay? So that means the positive numbers are greater than 0 and the negative numbers are less than 0, okay? All right, but it says we should get input from the keyboard. So let's start with that. That's the first part of our problem. We need to get input from the keyboard. So let me move this up. And let me just give myself some more space so that I can type it. Okay, so we need to get input from the keyboard. So let's just start with the input statement first of all, and then explain that you need to do some things that we'll check. So you can say something like, give me your number to count up or down. You don't have to say this. I just want to say to count up or down. You can just say, give me your number, and that would be good enough. All right, so the input statement would be called, and we want to put it in a variable, okay? So let's put it in n. We don't have to say n, we could say num, because I mean the parameter is called n. So let me just give it a different variable name. Let's see if we call this code, if it would run. We're not going to do anything else. We know it's not finished, but okay, so it says give me, okay, I should have had a little prompt here. So let me because I always like to have my input statements have a nice little prompt at the end. So let me put a colon here and a space so that it doesn't stick to the end of the screen. Let me try this again. All right, great. So give me your number, and then I could type like 5. Of course, it's not going to do anything because I need more code there. All right, but there's something very important for us to understand, right? That when you get input from the keyboard, it is a type that is not a number, it's a string. So if I were, for example, to print the type of num, I'm going to show you what it is. If I was to print the type of num, let me run this. This is not a part of the actual solution. I'm just trying to explain something to you. So you see, it says it's a class string. So we would not be able to use a string to check for greater than or less than. Is everybody with me so far in this part?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So, I mean, you might think that, okay, because I typed a number 5 at the keyboard, that, hey, it's going to get 5, but no, it's actually going to get a type of string. So to solve that problem, you could do something like, you could use the casting technique. So you would put int and wrap it around the variable. So you could do this after the input statement. I think that's all we need to do on the MC, and then I think we can check the type. I'm just doing this for testing, okay? I'm taking the long way to explain the problem so that you really understand what's happening here in the programming, okay? So let's check the type of num again as well. This is not a part of the question, just want to do this for clarification. So if I put 5 there, and you see now it is class int because on line 23, I have done this typecasting method by calling the int typecasting method on a num. Okay, so it's now an integer and I can use num after line 23 in my if statements to check if the number is greater than or less than 0. Okay, I can also do this in one step. How do I do it in one step? I could actually put this typecasting method around the input statement, okay? So I could, instead of doing it in 2 separate lines, why do it in 2 separate lines for clarity? I could do it in one line by saying int, and I'm gonna be wrapping another set of brackets around it. So be careful that you don't miss the number of brackets around it. So you could do something like this. Which one is easier for you to understand? Do you understand this method or the other one where I do it in 2 parts? Which one do you think is clearer to read? Or are both of them comfortable for you? So we have this.
Both is good, but I think I would prefer the other one because it's just
okay.
Direct and straightforward.
Right. So you prefer it looking like this?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, right. But either way will work. Okay, I just want everybody to know that either way would work. Okay. All right. But let's move on because whatever we do after that, we've solved the problem. We have to use type. Remember, it doesn't matter if you use a typecasting on one line or on a separate line. You have to move on from there once you get your integer. So now we need to check to see if we're going to be counting down or counting up, right? So when do we count down? Do we count down if the number is positive or if the number is negative?
We count down if the number is negative, then up if it's positive.
I actually think it's up if it's negative. Remember?
Okay. You are the
Remember. No. Don't, no, not because I'm the lecturer here. I wanted to understand that's what the question actually says. Remember when we had a negative number in the countdown, sorry, in the count up function from line 12, we were actually doing what? Working with negative numbers. So if it is a negative number, we use count up. It's actually what the question requires, okay? I just wanted to make sure you're following along. Okay, right. Yeah, not just because lecturer says this. You must always have understanding of why it is so. All right, so if the number is greater than 0, that means it's a positive number, and that means that we want to count up or count down. Which one do we do? Which one do we do?
Count down.
Right, we want to count down. Remember, see, here's the example still on the output screen. If you look on the right side, you see 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the positive numbers count down, right? So great. We would use countdown. All right, and countdown is going to call, what's going to be the parameter that we're going to pass to it? What's going to be the argument that we pass to countdown? Is it going to be an actual number? Is it going to be n? Is it going to be num? What do we put inside the brackets? Just want to check if everybody's following along.
I guess it's a num.
Yeah, it has to be num because num is what's going to contain our answer, our number from the input statement, okay? If we don't use num,
the argument, right?
Right. If we don't use num, then we're ignoring all of line 22 and 23, right? So it has to be num because that's where we get our number from this time. All right, great. So now if it's not a positive number or if it's not greater than 0, then what other condition is there? It must be something else. What else could it be? Well, there's only one option left, so it's easy now, right? Because we only have one choice. So now it must be count up. Okay, because there's no other choice. Literally, there is no other choice. So let's see here. So we can do, I think we can do that pretty much because wait, what if the number is, oh, there might be a case where it's actually literally equal to exactly 0. All right, but for now, let's test this and see how this works. So it's gonna call the countdown if the number is greater than 0. Otherwise, it's gonna do the count up. Let's actually run it and see what goes on. All right, let's try 5. So it counts down. All right, let me run the program again. Let me try -5. Okay, it blasts off. Now let me try exactly 0. And it just blasts off. So I think it works. I think it works. I was wondering if we needed to use if elif instead, but 0 works fine because if we realize here both functions check to see if n is greater than or equal to. So in the count up, we have greater than or equal to. So that must mean that we can have 0 as a starting number, and then right away it would blast off. It didn't tell us that we have to print. We have to use a non-zero number. Same thing for here. It says less than or equal to 0. So that means in the countdown, just like the count up, we can use 0 as well. Okay, wow, that was I think that explanation here. But is there any question? Anybody want me to do something again, to explain something again? Is this okay with everybody?
That was great. Thanks so much. Clarified a lot.
Let me see if
I think I understand. I think I understand it
Okay.
better now because when it comes positive, we have to count down, and then when it comes negative, we have to count up. So I think I'm getting the logic. Yeah.
Okay, great. Let me just check the question again because I think we might have unfinished business there. Okay, so we did this part. If the number is positive, we should call countdown. If it's negative, count up. Oh, it says choose for yourself which function to call, countdown or count up, for input 0. So I think to get the full marks for this journal, we need to put an elif, okay? Yeah, to be on the safe side, we don't want the instructor to give us 9 out of 10 if we can get full marks for this. So let's modify this so that we have a third one that calls what happens if it's 0, okay? Right. So this is why we have to read the questions carefully and be totally. So even though it seems to be fine, I think if we want to make sure that we get a perfect score, let's use an elif so that we test both for the positive, negative, and for exactly 0. Okay, everybody? All right. So elif is going to check if n is less than 0. Why are we doing this instead of else? Because when we use an elif allows us to have an else to catch any possible outside answers. So technically, we have 3 conditions that we want to look for. If the number is positive, if it is negative, or if it is exactly equal to 0. And the reason why we're concerned about this now is because if we look at the question, it says we should choose, this is the reason why we're doing this. Because of this part here, we should choose for ourselves which function to call for the input of 0. And the only way we're going to be able to do this and still check for a positive or a negative number is to use an elif. Right, that's the only way we're going to be doing that for this, okay? So the elif will take care of one condition and the else will take care of the final condition. So I hope that makes sense and I'm not confusing anybody, all right? I
didn't understand why you put n instead of num in there.
Oh, that's totally a mistake. Human error. Oh, sorry. Renata was telling me on the Google Meet that I have, and that's totally a human error, right? Human programmer here. Little mistake. Sorry. Oh boy. Okay. And then now we can have an else because we need to choose a function to call for for the 0 part, right? So we don't need to have another elif that says if num is equal to 0, because the only other option remaining is for it to be 0, okay? So if it's not negative or positive, then it must be 0. So you can choose here whether you use count down or count up, because both of them are going to have a condition that checks for 0. So if I use count down here, come on, learn to spell, guy. What's wrong with me? I'm still not learning how to spell. What is wrong with me here? Okay, great. So if you use countdown, it's going to check for 0. If we look at line 4, it's checking for 0. And if we use count up, it checks for 0. So it doesn't matter which one I use. Let me prove it to you. Let me run the program. And let me choose 5, positive 5. So it counts down as we expect. Let me run it one more time and use negative 5. It counts up as we expect. And now let me use 0 for the third test. And it blasts off. Okay, but will it have a problem if I use count up instead? Actually, it will not. So that's why the question says you can choose whether to use count up or count down if it is equal to 0. And if I run the program with a change made to use count up to handle a 0, you will see that when I enter the 0, it still blasts off. Because remember, it's checking for 0 in both of the functions. Okay, so that is why they said choose for yourself which function to call, count down or count up for input of 0, because both of them will take care of the 0 for you. So I hope that is clear for everybody. Yes?
Yeah.
All right, so everybody's quiet now, so I think they got the idea. So of course you need to send in the code of your program. By now you've been getting some experience as computer science students on how to send your code and how to do the output. All right. Oh, we still have more work to do in this journal. This journal is a busy journal, isn't it? Yes, it is. This journal is a busy journal. But let me just pause again. So is everybody good with that count up, count down? I think that's the last thing for count up and count down. I don't think there's anything else.
Yes, I'm good. Thanks so much.
All right, Renata says she's good. Everybody else good on Telegram? Okay, so a runtime error, let me sort of go up. I don't need to go up. I can just probably type it here. I guess everybody else is still with me. Did I lose the internet connection again or something? I hope not.
I'm here. I'm here.
Everybody's gone quiet. I don't know where they are, but let me continue.
I can hear you.
All right. All right. Okay, awesome. All right. So runtime error. All right. What this simply means is that that you have some mistake that crashes your program when you try to run it. This is the basic idea, okay? So remember, don't quote me. I'm just giving you the basic idea here. Let me make this bigger. All right, and let's see what that looks like on a code screen. Runtime error. I probably want to create a new replit for this. Let me save this link in case I need this later. All right, let me create a new replit so I keep this code separate. And create and Python create. All right, so there's some there's some popular errors that are runtime errors. One of the most popular ones is dividing by zero. So let me see. Runtime error, think Python. Okay. All right, so here we go. Because you definitely would want to reference your book as well. All right, this is kind of hard to read, so I need to zoom in on this. So this is from the textbook Think Python. So see, it says there that runtime errors are produced by the interpreter if something goes wrong while the program is running. Okay. Right. So your program can have the correct syntax, but it even though it has the correct syntax, it creates that error for you. Let me see what else the textbook is saying here. Program has, scanning through this when I wrote. Program, I get an exception, name error. Python prints a message, name error, type error, key error, index error. All right, okay, I was just scanning through the textbook to see if there was anything else there. But we do get an explanation from the textbook. So when you're using your references, you can quote the Think Python book for this section that I've highlighted here for runtime errors. All right, so let's try to do that runtime error, okay? So if I do print, if I try to do print 2 divided by 0 and run that, I get a runtime error, right? Division by 0. That's a popular example of a runtime error because you can't divide by 0. It's going to create an error. Of course, you could have done this with a variable. So let me just create a variable here. Let's say num1 equals 0, num2 equals 5. So if you do it with variables, it's the same thing. It doesn't really matter. I could put num1 here divided by num2. And so the syntax is correct. Notice there are no red underlines. This is actually something I can type with correct syntax. So the syntax is correct. There's no wrong syntax here. It's just that in terms of calculating, it's going to crash because it doesn't compute dividing by zeros. So when I run this, wait, why am I actually? Oh, I had this. I wasn't dividing by 0. I was dividing by 5. That would cause something on this if I had num2 here instead. That's a different thing. But you can use variables. That's the whole point. Point is that you can use variables. So you get division by 0 error because you cannot divide by 0. For some reason, you can divide 0 by 5. I'm not sure why that's not a problem. But anyways, dividing by 0 is one example of runtime errors. Let me give you another example of a runtime error. So that's one example. Another example of runtime error. Remember with the type conversion that we were doing before? So let's say I do something like hours equals input tell me your hours to get paid. Okay, and then I try to let me just expand the screen a bit. All right, and then I try to multiply hours. Let me say salary equal hours times, let's say they get $20 an hour, okay? All right, so let me run this now. Oh, I'm gonna get a divide by zero error here, so let me comment this out so that it skips to the next one. All right, so it says, tell me how many hours to get paid. So let me put 30 hours. Oh, I need to actually do something with this. It's not doing anything with this. So let me try to print salary. Let's go again. So how many hours to get paid? What? Oh, no, this doesn't work out. This doesn't work out as a runtime error. It's actually trying to convert. Oh, yes, I can multiply a string. I can multiply a string to actually repeat the number. I forgot that is actually something you could do in Python. Let me actually do addition to get, let me say bonus. That was actually something that's actually something you can legitimately do. You can repeat how many times a string is printed on the screen. But let me just do this, right? And then run this. Tell me how many hours to get your bonus, 30. Right, now we get a runtime error because we can't add a string to an integer. So the integer would be 20 and the string would be hours, because remember I told you that if you just type the input and you don't cast it, you get a runtime error. To solve the runtime error, we'd have to put int, and just like we did before with the previous program, we'd have to typecast it like that to not have the error, okay? So I didn't have to use an input statement. I could have just used a variable that definitely wouldn't work. So I could actually use a string right here. So there are different ways you can use examples in your program. This will definitely give you a runtime error. So if I do this and run, you see, I get a runtime error because I can't add 30 to 20. In fact, you don't even need to use the variable, right? You could just try to use a string directly here. Okay. And you know it's not possible. You're gonna get a concatenate error. All right, so those are probably two of the easiest examples you can use for runtime errors. So you just need to be creative and make a unique example. Okay. As I mentioned always when I'm doing these videos, I always tell you use your own unique examples. Okay. Please do not copy my code. Avoid plagiarism. All right, everybody. All right.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Okay, so so the runtime error is probably the shortest part of this whole journal. Weesh. Man, they did give us a workout with that previous stuff. Yeah, but that is pretty much it. So if there are no questions, we will wrap it up here.
All right, thanks so much. It was really, really good.
Okay, so Renata says she's good. Caroline, Emmanuel, Solomon, you're
Thank
good?
you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah. This really fantastic. I got it, and then I am so happy and grateful to you for the effort you put into it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm grateful.
Thank you so
Okay.
much, Lee.
All right, Caroline, happy to help. Okay, Jonathan, are you still there? Because we're all done now, so hopefully you were able to follow along. Not sure if you're having any problems with your audio mic, but we're going to be ending now. All right, so thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.